There's a moment that hits differently when you finally stop chasing. It's quiet, but it's not peace right away. Not at first. It starts as discomfort. You catch yourself reaching for your phone, then pulling your hand back. You think of what you'd say, then realize you've already said it all. The urge to explain, to check in, to make sure she knows how you feel, it's still there. But this time, you let it pass. And that's when the silence begins to take shape. It's strange because for so long, your connection was built on noise, the constant back and forth, the messages, the apologies, the "what are we" talks. You didn't even notice how much energy you poured into keeping that communication alive, even when it started to drain you. When you stop, it feels like pulling the plug on something you didn't realize was running 24/7 in the background. You start to see how addicted you were to checking if she still cared. Through her responses, her tone, her attention, you were measuring your worth by her reaction. Now, without it, everything slows down. At first, you tell yourself you're just giving space, but deep down, you know it's more than that. You're done trying to prove something that should have already been clear. You're done begging for clarity that never comes. And she notices it, even if she doesn't admit it. Because the energy between two people is always felt. When you go quiet, when you pull your focus back to yourself, she feels that withdrawal. Not through words, but through the absence of them. See, silence isn't nothing. It's communication in its rawest form. It says, "I've said all I needed to say. Now it's your turn." Or, it's over. The first few days might feel like a war in your own head. You'll replay memories, imagine her moving on, wonder if she even noticed. That's normal. You're detoxing from attachment. You're learning how to live without constant emotional feedback. But slowly, something changes. You start to breathe easier. You sleep better. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You realize that silence isn't just the absence of her, it's the return of you. And for the first time in a long time, you begin to see the truth. Maybe chasing her wasn't about love anymore. Maybe it was about fear. The fear of being forgotten, replaced, or unseen. But now, in the quiet, you start to remember your own worth, the one that doesn't depend on anyone noticing it. That's where the story begins to turn, because the moment you stop chasing is the same moment she starts to feel your absence for real. When you go quiet, her first reaction isn't sadness, it's confusion. She's used to a certain rhythm, the texts, the calls, the small reassurances that you're still there. You've built a pattern she could depend on, even if she didn't always appreciate it. So when that pattern breaks, it throws her off balance. At first, she doesn't assume you've moved on. She assumes you're upset. Maybe you're playing hard to get, or just cooling off. In her mind, it's temporary. She tells herself, he'll reach out again. He always does. That's the comfort she's built, not necessarily in you, but in the idea that she doesn't have to worry about losing you. So when that message doesn't come, her thoughts start to shift. Confusion turns into curiosity. She checks your profile. She reads old messages. She might even test the waters with something small. A story post, a random text, something harmless but intentional. She's not trying to reconnect just yet. She's trying to confirm something. Do I still have his attention? This isn't because she's manipulative. It's because attention, especially from someone who used to care deeply, becomes a kind of emotional safety net. Even if she doesn't want a full relationship, she still wants to know the door's open. When you go silent, that door finally closes and she feels the draft for the first time. It's a strange kind of control that disappears. Not control over you directly, but over how much access she had to you. Your time, your patience, your reassurance. You might think she didn't care because she seemed distant before. But the truth is, she was comfortable. Your chasing gave her a sense of importance. Your silence takes that away. So now she starts to overthink. She'll replay moments in her head, not because she misses you deeply yet, but because she's trying to figure out what changed. Was it something I said? Did he finally get tired? Is he talking to someone else? That's how it begins. The quiet starts to mess with her confidence, because what used to be predictable no longer is. She's not used to you being the one who doesn't need a response. She's used to you being the one who keeps things alive, who smooths things over when she pulls away. And here's the shift. When you stop chasing, she's no longer the one deciding how things go. The control she had starts to fade, and she feels it in subtle ways. The longer you stay quiet, the more she starts to realize something. The attention she thought she'd always have might not be coming back. She won't admit that out loud. Not yet. She might act unfazed, maybe even colder. But behind that calm front, there's discomfort. Because deep down, she knows something has changed. You're no longer orbiting her world. And that's when curiosity begins to turn into something she doesn't expect. Insecurity. When a man stops chasing, the first thing that reacts inside a woman isn't her heart. It's her ego. It's not about missing you yet. It's about wondering why you stopped seeing her the way she's used to being seen. The truth is, attention feels like validation, especially from someone who used to care deeply. When that validation disappears, it stings, not because of love, but because of what it represents. The loss of importance. At the beginning, she'll tell herself she's fine. She might even feel a sense of pride. She finally got him to stop, she'll think. Good. I needed space, but that feeling doesn't last. Because the ego is fragile. It wants to feel wanted, always. Even when it doesn't want to reciprocate. So your silence becomes something her ego can't easily digest. Now she's in conflict. Part of her wants to believe she doesn't care. The other part keeps checking to see if you still do. She'll scroll through old photos, open your chat and close it. Check your stories without realizing she's doing it. That's the ego searching for reassurance, the quiet proof that she still matters to you. Here's where things get tricky. When your attention was constant, she didn't have to question how much she meant to you. It was always there, waiting. But now she has to face the question she avoided. Was his presence something I took for granted? Emotionally, she starts to feel uneasy. Not devastated, but unsettled. It's like a mirror being held up to her behavior. She remembers how easily she ignored messages or brushed off your effort. Now, she's the one refreshing her screen, trying to figure out what happened. The ego doesn't like humility. It resists it. So instead of admitting she feels a void, she might double down. She might post something meant to look confident, a picture, a quote, a night out. Anything that says, I'm good without you. But those moments are often less about freedom and more about convincing herself she's not affected. And deep down, she knows it's not true, because the emotion is starting to creep in. When the ego can't find the validation it craves, the heart starts to wake up. That's when she begins to feel, really feel, what's gone. The quiet that once felt like control now feels like loss. That's the moment she realizes silence isn't passive. It's powerful. It's the first time she's seeing that your absence can create a reaction stronger than all your words ever did. But she's not ready to admit that yet. Not to you and not to herself. For now, she's still fighting it, trying to convince herself she's unaffected while the emotion quietly builds underneath. And soon, that emotion starts to outweigh the ego. That's when the power shifts, the part she never saw coming. There comes a point where your silence starts to settle in, not as a temporary thing, but as a new reality. At first, she thought it was just a phase. Maybe you were upset, maybe you needed space. But when the quiet keeps going, when you stay steady and unbothered, something in her starts to shift. This is where the power dynamic flips, because for a long time the balance was tilted. You were the one trying to keep things together, trying to be understood, trying to be chosen. You carried the emotional effort. She held the emotional authority, the power to decide how close or distant things felt. But when you stop chasing, that balance collapses. The same attention she once controlled is now gone, and she doesn't get to decide when it comes back. That's not about revenge, it's about energy. You took your power back without saying a word, simply by no longer offering it where it wasn't valued. And she feels that, not in an obvious dramatic way, but in small, subtle moments. She starts wondering why you're so calm, why you're not reacting, why you don't seem to need her presence anymore. It's unsettling because it breaks the pattern, the one where she knew she could pull away and you'd always return. Now, when she tries to test the waters, maybe by liking something, sending a random text, or asking how you've been, she doesn't get the same version of you. You're polite but distant, kind but detached. It's not anger she hears in your tone, it's indifference. And indifference hits harder than silence ever could. See, the real power isn't in ignoring someone. It's in not needing them to respond. It's in being able to walk away without bitterness. Because silence backed by peace, not resentment, carries weight. It communicates self-respect without having to prove anything. That's when she starts to see you differently. Not as the man who was always available, but as the one who finally meant what he said. The one who learned that love without balance drains you. And maybe for the first time, she starts to reflect. Not because you told her to, not because you made her feel guilty, but because your absence is doing what your words never could. It's showing her what it feels like to lose your presence. She might not say it out loud, but it hits her. You were never the problem for caring too much. She just got too used to it. And now that she can't rely on your effort, she starts to feel the weight of her own choices. The emotional security she once took for granted is gone, replaced by a quiet realization that the person who used to chase her isn't coming back. That's when the silence stops being something she can control and starts being something she has to live with. Silence has a strange way of showing people the truth they've been avoiding. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It just sits there, quietly holding up a mirror. And when she looks into that mirror, she starts to see what she didn't before. Your silence forces reflection. Not instantly, but gradually. She starts to remember how she acted, the ignored messages, the short replies, the way she made you feel like you were always asking for too much. She replayed those moments before, but never with any real weight. Now, though, the weight's there, because your silence gives those memories context. It makes her realize that every time she pulled away, every time she took your effort for granted, it added up to this moment, the one where you finally stopped trying. It's a strange thing for her, because for so long she told herself she wanted space, independence, or emotional freedom. And maybe she did. But now, that freedom feels cold. It's not the calm, empowering kind she imagined. It's empty, because now she's seeing what that freedom actually cost. The comfort of knowing someone truly cared. That's what the mirror of silence does. It doesn't punish, it just reflects. And what it shows her isn't you ignoring her or trying to prove a point. It shows her how her own behaviour led here. She starts to see the imbalance. How much you gave, how little she met you halfway. You can tell this shift is happening, even if you don't hear from her. The tone of her energy changes. Maybe her posts feel different. Maybe the confidence that once seemed so effortless now looks like she's trying a little too hard. She might even reach out with something casual like, "Hey, how have you been?" But underneath that simple message is something deeper, an unspoken awareness that she pushed too far. And the hardest part for her isn't realizing you're gone. It's realizing you left without resentment. That's what really hits. Because when someone walks away quietly, it shows they've made peace with the loss. There's no argument left to win, no closure left to chase. That calm silence makes her face herself. And in that space, she begins to question, why did I treat someone's love like it would always be there? Why did I act like being wanted was my right instead of something to be appreciated? That's the mirror doing its work. And the more she looks, the harder it is to turn away. What your words couldn't make her see, your silence now shows her clearly. You were never asking for too much. She was giving too little. And now, for the first time, she's starting to understand the cost of that. When you go quiet, the emotional timing between you and her completely changes. Men usually feel the loss early, right after the distance begins. That's when you wrestle with doubt, fight the urge to reach out, and sit with the discomfort of letting go. Women, on the other hand, often feel it later. They process it in delay. At first, she fills the silence with noise. She goes out more, posts more, surrounds herself with people who'll distract her from thinking too much. She tells herself it's fine, that she needed this distance anyway, that it's better this way. And for a while it works. She stays busy enough to avoid the quiet moments where reality could slip through. But distraction only works until life slows down. It's in those small moments, late at night, in the car, during a random song that reminds her of you, when it starts to hit. That's when the emotional delay catches up. It doesn't come as one big wave, it comes in small, unexpected flashes. A memory, a message draft she never sends, a moment where she goes to share something and realizes you're not the person she shares things with anymore. That's the moment when space stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like loss. See, during the chase, she got used to your energy being constant, your messages, your check-ins, the way you cared even when she didn't respond the same way. You created an emotional presence that became part of her daily life. When that disappears, it doesn't feel real at first, but over time she starts to notice the small emptiness in places where you used to be. She might not call it missing you, at least not right away. She'll say things like, "He changed," or "He's different now," as if that's the problem. But what she's really describing is the absence of that connection she once controlled, the emotional security she got from knowing you'd always show up. And that's the irony. She's feeling what you felt months ago. The same confusion, the same ache, the same questioning of what went wrong. But now it's her turn to sit in it, to realize that your silence wasn't a reaction. It was the result. You already went through the storm. You already faced the loneliness, the doubt, the need to explain yourself. What she's feeling now is the echo of all that. The emotional delay just means she's finally standing in the silence you've already learned to live with. And here's the quiet truth. The longer you stay centered, the more she starts to respect it. Because deep down, she knows how hard it is to walk away from something you cared about. She knows you didn't leave out of pride. You left because you had to. That realization doesn't happen fast, but it happens. And once it does, her entire view of you begins to shift. Something interesting happens when the dust finally settles, when your silence stops feeling like a reaction and starts looking like stability. That's when respect starts to take the place of attraction. See, attraction is easy. It's about spark, emotion, chemistry. But respect, that's something deeper. It comes when someone realizes you had the strength to do what most people can't. Walk away without hate, without noise, without needing to prove anything. At first, she might have mistaken your silence for indifference. She probably thought you didn't care anymore. But over time, she starts to notice that your quiet isn't cold. It's calm. It's not the silence of someone playing games. It's the silence of someone who finally stopped begging to be understood. And that hits different, because she remembers how she left things, how she took your patience for granted, how she assumed you'd always be there. But now, when she looks at you, she sees a man who doesn't need her validation anymore. That realization builds something new inside her. Respect. It's subtle at first. She won't say it directly. But it's there in how she talks about you to others. It's in the tone when she mentions your name. Softer, less defensive. She might even reach out, not to get back together, but to check in, to test if that calm she senses from you is real. And if it is, if you stay grounded, not cold, not distant, just peaceful. That's when the respect deepens, because most men don't handle silence like that. Most either lash out or disappear out of bitterness. But when you disappear out of acceptance, it carries a weight that's hard to ignore. You become, in her eyes, the man she didn't fully appreciate until she saw what life felt like without you. And that's not about ego, it's about maturity. Because real respect doesn't come from trying to prove your worth to someone, it comes from showing through action that you know it already. The more she sees you at peace, not chasing, not posting out of spite, not trying to make her jealous, the more she realizes that your silence isn't a wall, it's a boundary. It's self-control. And self-control is something people quietly admire, even when they can't match it. That's when something unexpected happens. The physical attraction that once depended on attention starts to fade, and a new kind of attraction forms, one rooted in respect. Because deep down, women don't just want a man who desires them, they want a man who can choose himself even when he desires them. That kind of strength makes her rethink everything, not because she wants to win you back, but because she starts to understand what she lost. And the truth is, once respect replaces attraction, the dynamic between you two is never the same again. There's a point where words stop mattering, where all the explanations, apologies, and long talks don't mean what they used to. That's the point you've reached, where silence becomes the only truth left between you. See, closure is something people chase because they want the story to make sense. They want to hear why. They want to fill the gaps, but most of the time, closure doesn't come through talking. It comes through accepting. And silence, as uncomfortable as it can be, is what finally forces that acceptance. When you stay silent, it tells her something no speech could ever express, that you've moved past needing her to understand. You don't need to explain how much you cared, or how hard you tried, or how long you waited. She already knows. The silence confirms that you're done repeating yourself. And ironically, that's when she starts to hear you more clearly than ever before. Because silence doesn't compete. It doesn't argue. It just exists. And in that space, she starts to process everything she ignored before. The late-night messages, the patience you showed, the effort you gave. It all comes back to her in flashes, but this time she sees it differently. Not as persistence, but as love she didn't value enough when she had it. That's when she realizes that your silence isn't punishment, it's peace. And peace is the one thing you can't fake. It's what separates silence that comes from ego from silence that comes from growth. Yours isn't about winning or proving something, it's about being done in a way that's calm, not cold. Final, but not bitter. The truth is, real closure rarely comes from conversations that tie everything neatly together. It comes from the quiet realization that nothing else needs to be said. You can care about someone, wish them well, and still not want to go back. And when she senses that, when she feels that you've truly let go, that's when the silence speaks loudest. Because it's no longer about her wondering if you're angry or hurt. It's about her realizing she can't reach you on the same level anymore. You've outgrown the need for reaction. You've made peace with what is. In a world where everyone rushes to talk, to post, to prove, your calm becomes something rare. Something that doesn't just protect you, it earns quiet respect, even from the person who once took your voice for granted. So when the silence settles, it's not emptiness. It's closure. The kind that doesn't need to be explained because it has already said everything it needed to.